Hello, it's great to see you again. According to one definition of a conspiracy theory, behind every major event or phenomenon in this world, there are always orchestrated plots and distorted truths designed to help a specific group of people achieve their interests. When we refer to that group, we're talking about governments, massive corporations, secret societies, or other clandestine organizations. Most conspiracy theories lack any concrete evidence and are often based on fabricated information or ideas that fly in the face of science. However, there are a handful of conspiracy theories that, over the years, have actually been proven to be true. In the energy industry, for instance, there is a long-standing theory that the inventor of an engine powered by water was eliminated by oil tycoons to protect their interests. Similarly, in the pharmaceutical world, hypotheses have circulated for decades suggesting that cheap and effective methods for curing terminal illnesses like cancer have been suppressed. The motive? To ensure that big pharma organizations can continue to rake in astronomical profits. Of course, until now, there hasn't been any definitive evidence to support that story, or has there? A classified CIA document from February 1951 was finally declassified in 2011. It summarizes a Soviet scientific article from 1950 that highlights the biological similarities between parasites and cancer. More shockingly, it points out that treatments used for parasites could potentially be applied to cancer. What the hell? Cancer has long been regarded as the final boss of the medical world. Every year, approximately 20 million people worldwide are diagnosed with cancer, and nearly 10 million lose their lives to it, making it one of the leading causes of death today. According to forecasts, the total global cost of treating cancer, covering the 29 most common types, is expected to reach a staggering $25.2 trillion between 2020 and 2050. To help you visualize that number, it is nearly 50 times Vietnam's projected nominal GDP for the year 2026. In a world where the burden of cancer remains an unsolved mystery, rumors that the CIA kept a cheap treatment secret for 60 years sparked a massive wave of outrage across the internet. So, what is the actual truth? Did the CIA really discover a cure for cancer and hide it so that big pharma could keep selling expensive drugs? Do parasites actually cause cancer? Let's dive into that recently declassified document. This document was drafted by the CIA in May 1951. Based on research by VFX, classified documents in the United States are typically reviewed for automatic declassification after 25 years. The fact that this specific document was kept under wraps for 64 years means it fell into at least one of 9 exception categories, which include things like sensitive technology, defense strategies, or national security concerns. Returning to the CIA document, it summarizes a Soviet scientific report that investigated malignant tumors and several types of parasites, including intestinal worms. According to this document, Soviet researchers viewed parasitic worms and cancerous tumors as two organisms, and I use that word in quotes. They believed that both entities exhibited striking similarities. The most prominent of these was their metabolism. Parasitic worms living in the human gut rely primarily on anaerobic metabolism, which means they generate energy without requiring a large supply of oxygen. Tumors operate in a very similar way. The interior of a tumor is often characterized by a lack of blood vessels and oxygen. If these cells were heavily dependent on oxygen, the tumor would simply wither away. However, thanks to anaerobic metabolism, they continue to grow aggressively. Secondly, both parasitic worms and malignant tumors accumulate large amounts of glycogen, which is a form of stored energy. This suggests that both can function effectively under adverse metabolic conditions that would be difficult for healthy cells to survive in. The research also pointed out that drugs specifically designed to target parasites also had an effect on tumors. One example mentioned in the CIA document is Mirasil D, a compound synthesized by the German chemist Hughes in 1938. This drug proved effective against schistosomiasis, and according to the Soviet research, it also showed promise against tumors. Another compound mentioned in the report is guanizolo, a molecule that interferes with the production of nucleic acids, the fundamental building blocks of DNA and RNA. In experimental trials, guanizolo inhibited nucleic acid synthesis in certain microorganisms as well as in mouse tumors. Because cancer cells need to replicate DNA rapidly to divide uncontrollably, blocking this process should, in theory, slow down the growth of the tumor. The study also noted that both parasites and cancer cells reacted similarly to optical isomers of atabrine, which was a common antimalarial drug at the time. Even though this document was declassified over a decade ago and should have faded into obscurity, social media, and particularly those who love digging up old secrets, brought it back into the spotlight. Worse yet, it triggered a viral storm of indignation. Conspiracy theorists were quick to map out two main scenarios: that the CIA tried to hide the parasitic origin of cancer, and that they suppressed a parasite-based cure. When you combine those three elements, a classified CIA document, cancer, and 60 years of secrecy, it sounds incredibly suspicious, especially for anyone who tends to skim headlines and jump straight to the comments. However, when you read the entire original document and perform a bit of fact-checking, the truth slowly begins to reveal itself. First and foremost, the CIA did not invent a cure for cancer. This declassified document isn't even an original piece of CIA research. In essence, it is a translation and a summary of a scientific article published in the Soviet journal Pravda in 1950 by Professor V.V. Alpatov, an expert in parasitology. The CIA is not a medical research organization. This document was simply a part of their routine monitoring of foreign technological advancements, particularly those coming out of the Soviet Union during the early years of the Cold War. The logic was simple: if someone was developing biological weapons or a major biomedical breakthrough, the United States wanted to be the first to know about it. Second, not all cancers are caused by parasites. While the two organisms share many similarities, it does not mean that every instance of cancer is the result of an infection. Instead, from a modern scientific perspective, those similarities are seen as a form of evolutionary mimicry. Think of the hoverfly. It has no stinger, no venom, and is completely harmless, but it mimics the appearance of a wasp. Because of this, it looks dangerous and less appetizing to its enemies. Evolutionary mimicry is a survival strategy where one species evolves to look like another because they both have to survive in the same harsh conditions, in this case, inside the human body. It is crucial to remember that parasitic worms are an entirely different species. Cancer, on the other hand, is a mass of the body's own cells that have undergone mutation. They are not independent organisms. You might think that's an obvious point that doesn't need to be said, but the idea that cancer is more than just a cell mutation, that it is actually the evolution of a new and unique parasitic species, was once a topic of intense debate in the scientific community. This is known as the cancer speciation theory, and it was championed by biologist Peter Duesberg. Just for fun, do you know what else inside the human body resembles an independent organism? Let's get back to being serious. The idea that cancer could be rooted in parasites actually dates back to the late 19th century. This theory gained significant attention when scientists first discovered that microorganisms were responsible for diseases like tuberculosis and cholera. However, the theory fell out of favor in the early 20th century as humanity began to discover that genetic codes and environmental factors were also major causes of cancer. For example, in 1914, Theodore Boveri presented evidence showing that cancer was linked to exposure to toxic industrial chemicals and was likely caused by chromosomal abnormalities. But it is true that some parasites do cause cancer. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has identified several types of parasitic worms as known carcinogens. This includes a type of fluke called Schistosoma hematobium, which causes squamous cell carcinoma of the bladder. Southeast Asian liver flukes and Chinese liver flukes are known to cause bile duct cancer. In these specific cases, the worms cause tissue damage and chronic inflammation, which eventually leads to genetic mutations in human cells. This mechanism of causing cancer is similar to how asbestos was once widely used in the construction industry. Third, there is no hidden cancer cure. The fact that both parasitic worms and tumors are affected by certain compounds does not mean that a cancer patient can simply take deworming medicine and be cured. The research conducted by Soviet scientists was not a definitive scientific conclusion, nor was it a proven treatment for cancer. They were merely proposing a hypothesis: if tumors are biologically similar to parasites, could drugs used to treat worms also work for cancer? The studies on Mirasil D and Guanazolo mentioned in the CIA document are real, and these compounds were tested on animals. However, their effectiveness in treating cancer in humans was never proven. It is certainly not a simple, one-size-fits-all solution for cancer. Furthermore, this idea wasn't sealed away or forgotten until 2026, as some people might believe. Scientists have known about the similarities between parasites and cancer cells for a long time. In fact, deworming drugs have been, and still are, being researched as potential cancer treatments. But as you can see, no one is heading to the pharmacy to buy worm medicine to treat their cancer. While some antiparasitic drugs, such as ivermectin and benzimidazole, can inhibit the growth of cancer cells in mice or in a petri dish, their level of effectiveness in the human body is so low that it is negligible when used on its own. Instead, researchers look at how to combine these drugs with traditional methods like chemotherapy, radiation, or immunotherapy to achieve a more effective combined treatment. To wrap things up, when you dig deep enough into this declassified CIA document, it doesn't look like a conspiracy to hide a cure for cancer using deworming pills. Instead, it appears to be a legitimate and noteworthy medical effort from the mid-20th century, a time when researchers were struggling to understand the fundamental nature of cancer and searching for any clues that might lead to effective treatments in the future. However, that is just the perspective of VFX. Do you still have doubts about this document? Do you think there might be other cancer treatments being kept secret that we don't know about yet? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video helpful or interesting, remember to give it a like. For now, goodbye, and we'll see you in the next one.